Case to you, Tom Carroll is one and done at Ipswich Town. Signed last summer, leaves this summer, and it's one that didn't really ever get going, was he? Sadly,
No, I guess by law of averages, when you sign 19 players in one transfer window, there's going to be some misses to go with the hits, and Tom Carroll sadly is goes down as one of the former. I think he only made 11 starts in the end, 8 of which were in the league, and no great surprises when he was amongst the list of names released at the end of the season.
yeah, I'm sure that didn't take him by surprise either. He'd have wanted a lot more from a season where he has dropped down to League One, wouldn't he? After spending the vast majority of his career in the Premier League and then the Championship. But you kind of look back at his signing. He was signing number 16 through the door. At that point, he joined a midfield unit that had Lee Evans and Raheem Harper in it as a starting pair, and Idris El Mazouni backing them up. So at that point, Ipswich needed a midfielder. 2 weeks later, though, Sam Morsy arrives on right on the transfer deadline, and from that moment on, it kind of felt hard for Tom Carroll to get into this team. Really, for me, and it was a struggle to see where he really managed to fit in.
Yeah, it's easy to forget the pedigree of player that he's been earlier in his career, playing some Premier League football for Tottenham, getting a big money move to Swansea, and even the season before he came to Ipswich was, by all accounts, rattling out the games for QPR and playing really well in the Championship up until Christmas. And the only reason Ipswich managed to get him was because he was injured for the second half of the season, and he has this major injury question mark over his head coming to Portman Road. And sadly, he leaves with it still there because I think it was a hip operation that kind of did for him at QPR, and it was a hip flexor problem that flared up in the early stages of this season. So you're right, that coupled with Sam Morsy's arrival late in August made for some pretty limited game time for Tom Carroll. And let's be honest, on the odd occasions where he was parachuted back into the team further down the track, was never really able to take his chances. Glimpses of his footballing ability, his technical ability, but just looked a bit too lightweight for League One football, really, didn't he? And kind of finished on a whimper with that 1-0 home defeat to Cambridge.
Yeah, I think that'll be the big knock on him. Under the two managers that he played under, the first was Paul Cook, of course, who had Sam Morsy and Lee Evans, who were his midfield duo from Wigan. In an Ipswich Town midfield in that time, you were asked to sit deep, shield the back four, and spray the ball around a little bit. There's part of that Tom Carroll could do, which is spray the ball around. There's part of it he couldn't do, which was to sit a bit deeper and shield and tackle and win the ball. Under Kieran McKenna, that all changed. Morsy was given an opportunity to get forward, which meant the second player in that team was asked to be that even more defensive, wouldn't they? And kind of shield the back four. And if playing with Morsy, who was a cement name on the team sheet, it to me, the role just didn't suit him at that point. You could see that with Tyreek Backinson brought in January as they looked to shake things up a little bit. But there was a nice little period in there. I remember, I think my good period of Carroll, I remember at AFC Wimbledon when we found out Morsy was suspended like an hour before kickoff. Carroll came in and did okay in kind of a makeshift midfield. He was involved in the win over Gillingham as well as Town managed to see out Morsy's suspension fairly well. So that will be kind of Carroll's golden period for me as an Ipswich Town player. But as you've said, the physical side of things just didn't. It just didn't.
Yeah, the physical side and maybe a little bit passive at times as well. I think he described himself as being that sort of ticker in a team, someone that just can recycle the ball. Would pride himself on his passing accuracy, can take it off the defence and just make sure you keep the ball. And you did wonder when Kieran McKenna came in, someone who will have known Tom Carroll from his Tottenham Youth Academy days, whether that Morsy-Carroll partnership would really work, because the shackles had been taken off Morsy. He was suddenly being allowed to burst into the box, and maybe that would allow Tom Carroll to sit and do that job that we discussed. But Tyreek Backinson had come in from Bristol City by that point in January, and he was the one that kind of got the run of games in midfield in the absence of Lee Evans. So He's still only 29 years of age, Tom Carroll. It's easy to forget that, but you look back at his recent seasons, he's rarely making it to 20 starts. Real stop-start time through injuries, just find himself released from a League One club. It'll be very interesting to see where he rocks up next. But those injury question marks will certainly play its part. But there'll be a club somewhere that there's always someone that thinks they can get the best Tom Carroll to come to the fore again. So it'll be interesting whether he's still in League One, where he ends up, really.
I think he could even end up playing higher. I think a Championship club could come in and take him. They'd be doing it, as you say, with some red flags that they'd need to tick off along the way and be comfortable with. But I don't think just because he's been released by Ipswich, it's necessarily sort of down for Tom Carroll from here. But saying that, I don't think too much of that next decision will be made by a club based on his performance in an Ipswich shirt. For me, it'll be pedigree and what he's done in previous years.